Hello everyone, I'm Zyphine, your host of TCG News, and this video will be 10 minutes of useless information about card games. Let's jump right in, right now. The first reference to a card game in world history dates back to the year 868 called Leaf Game or The Game of Leaves. The first ever collectible card game was created in 1993 by no other than Magic the Gathering. Shocker. The first ever expansion for Magic the Gathering came out in 1993, the same year it was released, and was called Arabian Nights. The second expansion to come out for Magic the Gathering came out 2 years later in 1995, which was called Homelands. Zatch Bell was one of, if not the absolute first TCG to technically not use a deck to play. Instead, you used a spellbook, which honestly was awesome. You just put all your cards in an actual spellbook just like the anime. If you haven't seen it, here, actually, I'll show some videos, hopefully, if I can find some. The most expensive card ever sold was in 2022, called Honus Wagner, I think I said that right, and was sold for $7.2 million. Obviously, it was a baseball card. The most expensive card for playable card games were as followed for the top 3 games. We have Pokemon. The Pikachu Illustrator was sold for $5.275 million on July 2021. Next up, we have Magic the Gathering, coming in with Black Lotus at $615,000. Followed by Yu-Gi-Oh!, which was Tyler the Great Warrior for $311,211. The first TCG server on Guilded to break over 100 people and up to 444 people were Guilded.gg/TCG, which you should definitely check out. As of making this video, the top played TCG on Steam is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Speaking of card game video games, the first ever TCG to come out was in 1997 and released for Windows 95 called Chandelar, which was made by Magic the Gathering. It was also the last game Sid Meier would ever help to create for Magic the Gathering. The first ever Pokemon TCG video game to ever come out was in 1998 in Japan and wasn't released to the West until 2000, which was Pokemon the Trading Card Game. Another fun fact, I still play this game, and I actually use the Super Nintendo Game Boy cartridge to play it on my TV. The first ever Yu-Gi-Oh! Video game came out in 1998 and was called Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Capsule Breed and Battle, which came out for the PlayStation. It was only ever released in Japan. First ever Yu-Gi-Oh! Video game to come out in the United States wasn't until 1999 and was called Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memory. 3 games came out prior to, but were only released in Japan. The Pokemon Company wasn't always the publishers of the Pokemon card game. From 1996 to 2013, a company called Media Factory had the publication rights to it in Japan. In the United States, from 1998 to 2003, Wizards of the Coast was the original publisher of the Pokemon game as well. The Star Wars trading card game was designed by Richard Garfield to please all types of Star Wars fans. The original manga for Yu-Gi-Oh! Used to be a lot darker than the show itself. The Pharaoh sets an escaped prisoner on fire at one time. At their school, a bully who was harassing Yugi and Joey had his eyes turned into a permanent mosaic. Originally in Magic the Gathering, when you lost, you would have to give up a card. The most funded TCG ever on Kickstarter was Sorcery Contested Realm TCG and raised $3,643,288.61 by 6,456 backers. This is also the second most funded card game ever on Kickstarter, Exploding Kittens being number 1 at just under $9 million raised. However, it's not a TCG, so we really don't care about it right now. The first ever banned card in Magic the Gathering was Test of Endurance. In the Pokemon TV show, Gary at one point shows 10 badges, which brought the entire region and gym challenges into question. The Yu-Gi-Oh! TV show we all know and love wasn't actually the first show around that was made for Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, as referred to fans, was technically the first ever ran Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, with a single season being made in 1998. The anime did not revolve around the game and didn't even show up until later on, being called Magic and Wizards and not the original Yu-Gi-Oh! We all know and love. They then rebranded the anime to focus around the card game and scrapped that entire anime itself. The first printing of Magic the Gathering actually forgot to add 2 cards to the packs themselves. Were 100% supposed to be added to the card packs themselves, and they were called Circle of Protection Black and Volcanic Island. In Marvel Champions TCG, Ultron has 162 health at Stage 3 with 6 players. Age of Empires has its own expandable card game. Plants vs. Zombies has an AR, augmented reality trading card game. The Final Fantasy trading card game released in 2016. Demi card game originally started out as a TCG in mind, but due to funding has leaned more into an ECG, more popularly known as a LCG. Speaking of, the term LCG is registered by Fantasy Fight Games, which makes it impossible for other card games to refer to their game as a livable card game. Though technically not impossible, they could, but they would get sued, so you know what I mean. Instead of calling small TCG games indie TCGs like people do with indie games and other things, most people refer to them as HTCGs, or homemade trading card games. I own 3 physical copies of indie TCG games, and yes, I refuse to call them HTCGs. The 3 indie TCGs I own are Demi, Pixicry, and Heaven vs. Hell. I am a developer of 2 of those 3 indie TCGs, Demi and Pixicry being the 2 I own, and Heaven vs. Hell being the one I do not own. Keyforge cannot technically be categorized as a TCG. In Flesh and Blood, many cards have 3 different versions based off their rarity, making deck building more interesting. In the Japanese anime of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Bandit Keith actually pulls out a gun on Pegasus. As well as in the manga, they both actually die, both being Bandit Keith and also Pegasus. The reason behind the Forbidden list, which is Yu-Gi-Oh!'s ban list, was actually because of the card Yoda Garuso. I definitely did not say that right, but here's the card image. The most successful Kickstarter on Gilda.gg/TCG is Mithril, raising over $66,000, more than doubling what they needed. Remember when I mentioned Tyler the Great Warrior, and it being the most expensive Yu-Gi-Oh! Card ever sold? Well, there's a story behind it, and it was actually created by the Make-A-Wish Foundation. In 2002, a boy named Tyler Gressy, who was diagnosed with liver cancer and had very, very low chances of survival. When he found out, he went ahead and asked to have a card created for him based off his favorite game of all times. And that's how Tyler the Great Warrior was actually created. There's good news to the story though. Tyler actually made a full recovery. That last story was probably one of the most emotional stories I've ever learned about TCGs ever. The other one actually is the founder of Yu-Gi-Oh! Died last year, July of 2022. He drowned whilst trying to save others from drowning. He successfully actually saved their lives, but it cost him his own. Duel Masters was released in Japan in May 2002, and it didn't reach the United States until March 5th, 2004. I actually own the original Game Boy Advance game of Duel Masters, which came with its own starter deck. My favorite card from Duel Masters is Ruthless the Traveler. I never liked to play the card because of its effect, but it was still my favorite card for some reason. The card effect for that being, when you put this creature into the battle zone, destroy one of your creatures, then your opponent chooses one of his creatures and destroys it. The Dragon Ball Z collectible card game didn't come out until July 18th, 2008. The Dragon Ball Z CCG has a 5.8 out of 10 star rating on BoardGameGeek. Here's a list of some of the most popular card games of 2023. Hearthstone, Uno, Magic the Gathering, Exploding Kittens, Magic the Gathering, Arena, I think, Gwent, The Witcher card game, The Elder Scrolls Legends, Legends of Runeterra, which is actually really fun, Cards Against Humanity, Pokemon trading card game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, Slay the Spire, Unstoppable Unicorns, Marvel Snap, Eternal card game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, Arkham Horror, the card game, Exploding Kittens, again, Codenames, Pokemon TCG Online, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, Monopoly Deal, what? Final Fantasy trading card game, and Hearts. First time Hearts was played in America was in the 1880s. On the website Wargamer, the Best Card Games 2023 list, Arkham Horror, the card game, actually trumps Magic the Gathering at the #1 spot. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, here are all the card types: Normal, Effect, Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, Pendulum, Link, Token, Normal, Quick Play, Continuous, Equipped, Field, Ritual, Normal, Continuous, Counter. I feel like they listed Normal like 3 times. but okay. In the Pokemon video game, Pikachu really cannot do any electric damage to any rock. It's literally impossible. But in the TV show, he has defeated multiple different rock-type creatures, like, quite often. Fans are currently trying to work on a HoloLens version of Yu-Gi-Oh! To make it a fully holographic version of the game. And in Magic, the very first pack wasn't actually called Alpha. I don't even think it was called anything, but it wasn't until later where they decided to call it Alpha. And also, even Beta wasn't even called Beta, it was called the Ultimate Edition. So shockingly extremely difficult to put together, so let me know how you liked it. If you'd like to see another video like this, then please go ahead and give me some ideas, facts, and other things in the comment section below. It's surprisingly really hard to find facts for games, especially outside of the top 3 card games. And as always, please go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and everything else the YouTube algorithm forces you to do in order to actually make these videos show up anywhere. And also, I guess, hit the bell icon and whatever else. Thanks for watching.